I just started grinding, right? And realized very quickly grinding was not going to be sustainable. There's no way. It just wasn't sustainable. I found myself constantly burning out. So our feelings are downstream from our thoughts. And if you think about how that whole model works, we tend to take action based off of our feelings. So when we feel overwhelmed, we just work more. We just work late. We skip our workouts. We eat junk food because we're just looking for the dopamine hit. Whatever it is, you need a system that's going to give you freedom in this present moment to really do your best work or be fully present to whatever it is that you want to do.
Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast. This is the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Julie Holly, and it is a Thursday. And on Thursdays, you know what to expect, Conscious Investor, if you've been listening for a while. And if you're new to the show, welcome, and know that every Thursday, I have just such a blessing to bring on an invaluable guest to pour into you. And every week on Thursdays, I bring on a guest that is an expert in some field that's going to help you in your health, in your mindset, or with your wealth building strategies. And when I was thinking about this topic today, and I was thinking about a guest, I met the guest Andrew, who's going to come on in just a moment. But in conversation with Andrew, I was like, whoa, this crosses over on health, mindset, and wealth, Conscious Investor, because we're going to be talking about your time and how you can become the boss of your time. Andrew is the time boss. And when we have control over our time, we're going to have healthier relationships. We're going to have healthier bodies. We're going to have clarity in our mindset. And that's going to be reflected in the wealth that we are generating in our life. So this really transcends every single part of our life. And I'm so excited. If you haven't already picked up your ticket to the Conscious Investor Growth Summit, I want to invite you. Don't hesitate. There are only 150 tickets available. That's it. When they're sold out, and they are selling. There are discounted rates available, and there are only certain numbers of tickets that are available at the different prices. So you want to make sure that you head on over to the consciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com. Check out the whole entire event. We talk about all three topics. This isn't just a real estate event. This is an event that is holistic, that will serve you in every single capacity. And I just want to say, I want to see you there. I want to meet you face to face. We don't want to just have a relationship through our earbuds or through, the speakers. I want to meet you. I want to meet you in person, break bread, do a cold plunge maybe, and have a great time. So make sure you head on over to consciousinvestorgrowthsummit.com to pick up your tickets. Andrew, I have been looking forward to recording this podcast episode since I was talking to you as I walked my dog on my North Idaho road. So welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast.
Awesome, Julie. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this as well. I really have.
Our conversation was just so fun and just so informative. I was like, I have to have Andrew on the Conscious Investor Podcast, and I'm really excited to ask the question in Conscious Investor, that question, because it's such a valuable, rich question. Andrew, we all want to know, what do you do and how did you get started?
Yes, love it. Great question. So I am the founder of Time Boss. We are a training and development company around time mastery. And really the big idea is, how do you get the results that you want from your time without overwhelm? How do you find that sweet spot where you can get the life that you want without anxiety or stress or fear being just a stick at your heels that's dragging you down? But instead, your life is driven by peace, freedom, and clarity, really going after the life that you want. So that's what we do. That's how we train. My story, how it all began, is completely different. I was a hot mess. So found myself late 20s, was working a job where I had way more to do than I had time to do it. And I just was utterly overwhelmed. And a lot of us get this way, when we have more to do than we have time to do it. And we don't have a way to think about that. Our natural inclination is just to shovel faster. We tend to be grinders. I have to imagine, Conscious Investor, from what Julia's shared with me about you, you are a driven person. You have big dreams. You have things that you're pursuing. And that was me as well. I cared deeply about my contribution. I wanted to make a massive impact on the things I was focused on, but there was so much more to do than I had time to do it. It truly was just overwhelming me. So this led to all kinds of um, wacky outcomes. Sleep was terrible. Wake up in the middle of the night. I'd have post-it notes by my bed just to get thoughts out of my head. I was just overwhelmed by all the details I was trying to manage. I'd write them down on the post-it note, wake up the next morning, look at the post-it note, and have, it'd be total chicken scratch. No idea what it was saying. So not only was I not sleeping, I wasn't getting these things out of my head. Um, Started missing workouts. So my health was an issue. All of this culminated with me actually losing my sense of smell for 6 months just due to stress, just due to the anxiety of all that I was working on. And
Wow.
it's a wacky symptom, but if you look at stress has all kinds of odd
Mhm.
impacts on our body. Migraines, irritable bowel syndrome. We can have hypertension. It can mess with our sensory organs. You can lose your sense of touch can even be lessened just because of stress. It's the body saying, it's the yellow flashing light saying this needs to be different.
Mm.
And so I was in a rough spot, and I realized, I had a great education, great family, and I realized no one had ever taught me how to actually manage my time. And certainly, I read a great quote yesterday that said, if we just needed to learn a little bit more, we'd all be billionaires with 6-pack abs, because
Right.
we have that false belief that the information is out there. And what I realized was I had to figure out a way to put the practice into the things I'd already learned related to time. And so
Mhm.
that led me on a journey, a long 10-year journey, to build out a system for myself to allow me to get the life that I wanted without overwhelm be a part of that equation. And I'd love to get into it today. We could talk all about it, Julie, but that's really where I began. I began from a very rough place to come to where I am now.
I'm holding back getting teary-eyed because I feel the tears wanting to
Uh,
puddle up right now, because this is so relatable. And Conscious Investor, I know you love your job and you also have a side hustle so oftentimes, and you feel stretched between, I have my W-2 career that I love, I have my side hustle that I love, I have my family that I love, I have
right,
contribution that I love. Like, we feel so pulled, and that can lead to such overwhelm. I mean, high achievers, highly motivated people, we know we can do it all, but we don't have the tool. Just like you said, Andrew, like you just
right.
nailed it so well. Like all these little dots connected for me in just how you
Mm,
phrased that, right? And we're not taught, just like a lot of people aren't taught how to use their money and how to have a strong money
right,
mindset. People are not taught how to organize their time. So where did you
right.
even start?
Yeah, it's a great question. Uh, my first inclination, like I said, when you're overwhelmed, and again, I have to imagine, the individual, the conscious investor, you listening, you were driven like me. I just started grinding, right? And realized very quickly, grinding was not going to be sustainable. There's no way. It just wasn't sustainable. I found myself constantly burning out. I should mention, I moved on from those roles early in my career to be either a product leader or a COO of early stage software companies, which only heightened the stress and anxiety from short runways, high expectations. We had to deliver, so it was challenging. Um, so yeah, for me it was, I started reading, and what I found was the resources that were out there were components of a framework. They would help me solve a piece of it. There's a great book, I bet a conscious investor you may have read, or a number of us may have read, called Getting Things Done. And Getting Things Done was magical at get it out of your head and into a system. And I'm such a believer in that. And I grabbed a hold of that, but it was only a partial solve. And so I just had to continuously build and test and refine. And really what I came down to was a weekly planning process that literally became this experimentation ground, Julie, where every single week I was trying something different, tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And I didn't set out to create a company called Time Boss that would train others how to do this. I was trying to solve my own problem. I was, I, like you said, I had a family that I loved and cared about. I had these little kids that I was coming home and being physically present with, but emotionally everywhere else, answering emails in the back of my head, managing projects in the back of my head. And my wife will tell you there were years where I was physically present and emotionally not there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was impacting my health. It was impacting my relationships. And that's really what drove me to change. And so, ultimately, I like to joke, I ran 700 plus weekly planning meetings so everyone else doesn't have to. It was just iteration after iteration after iteration. And finally, I was working in early stage software companies. It had to be so simple. It had to be something that was absolutely implementable, that would work in my world, that had no waste associated with it. And so those iterations after iterations after iterations that led me to this simple framework that I now call the Time Boss framework, but really it was the Andrew Hartman framework. And then I taught my teams because I started making massive impact and doing so really without breaking a sweat, without anxiety or overwhelm or stress being a part of that equation. They started experiencing that same benefit. I moved on to another company. They moved on to other companies. I trained my new teams and it would work. Those team members that went on to other companies asked me to come to their companies to train them because of, hey, whatever you were doing at that last company, can you please come do it here? And it was this real kind of wake up moment for me of, oh, this is interesting. Like, this isn't just an Andrew Hartman framework. This might just be a human framework.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how it came to be what it is today. So
I think that the best additions into the world stem from an individual seeking to solve
right,
their own and to slay their own hydra. Like, okay,
right.
I'm gonna go after the dragon. I'm going after the hydra. I'm going to tackle this. And in that process, the world has been a recipient of so many incredible contributions, like Time Boss, because it's like,
You're so kind.
oh, you went through one of my favorite books. You're looking at books earlier is we'll pull it off. It's a small, you may How to Fight a Hydra.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one. I
Okay,
like it.
so Conscious Investor, if you're over on YouTube, I'm holding it up by Josh Kaufman. It's a little fable, and it's on technically on productivity, but
Mm,
it's the process that you went through. It's the
mm,
iterations and it's painful. So
it is painful.
how, before we get into actually like some of the strategy and thinking behind it, I just want to know, like, how did you push through? Because there are a lot of people that are just like, I'm done and I just can't try one more thing because I've tried so many things and I can't do it.
I totally get that. I totally
I
get
know
that.
you
And,
do.
and
That's why I'm
life,
asking you.
yeah, and life change is hard. It really is. It really is. I mean, if you've ever tried to, go on an extreme diet, change your physical health, stop smoking, stop drinking. I mean, these are hard things to change, and time is no different because we have habituated ourselves into how we lead our time. Our experience of our week is a direct function of our habits, right? The system is perfectly tuned for the
Mm.
results that we're getting. And our habits related to time are perfectly tuned for our experience of life. And so for me, it was a few things. One, it was the motivation of my family. I knew I wanted to be there for my family in a way that I wasn't. And I wanted my contribution. I care deeply. I'm not a second gear guy. I want to have massive impact. I want to participate in big things because I really care, because my heart is connected to the work that I'm doing. And so those two things were really the motivating factor. And I knew just very logically, I knew that if I kept burning out, I was going to lose both. It wasn't just that I was going to lose my family and they were going to get the worst of me. I wasn't even going to be able to make my contribution. And so our logic related to how we approach time is so wacky, right? The hustle mentality that's all over the internet, I think is so sideways. It is this bottom of the brainstem, like non-thinking way. I'm just going to grind. I'm just going to go. My only way I can get generational wealth is if I work that 120-hour week and just go get it. It's like, certainly, like, it is a way to get it. But, for you, Julie, for me, for the conscious investor that's listening, I think there's so much more to life than just that generational wealth. Again, it's the family, it's the contribution, it's making an impact in our community, it's our health, it's our vitality. And so in that environment, for me, I knew that those things were at stake, Julie, and I knew if I didn't change, I would lose it all. And that was the motivating factor for me. And so it caused me to make a really interesting decision that was ultimately I think the key to this whole model, and is I made overwhelm a boundary condition of my success. I said no more. I will not operate in such a way where overwhelm, stress, fear, and anxiety are the guiding factor that drive me to take action and make decisions. And that single decision, when you think about that week over week experiment process I was making, was the key differentiator that changed everything.
How did you hold yourself accountable? Conscious investor, I know you are wondering the same thing, because you're in that pigeonhole. You're there, right where Andrew was, and you're like, every bit of this is resonating with you, and you want more, and you don't know how. And like, so how did you hold yourself accountable to that boundary of like, no, I'm not gonna go into overwhelm again?
I think it's Tony Robbins says we get our musts, and for me, it just became the must. It became the standard. It became the floor, and it was a burn the ships. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And truly, you think about it. So my real significant overwhelm started at 27. My last burnout was 9 years later, like my final flame out in the middle of those early stage companies that I was in. And the pain was loud enough for me to change. There were many opportunities, many off ramps from overwhelm along the way, but the pain was loud enough for me to change. And sometimes, sadly, that's what it takes. But sometimes, you can wait for the pain to get louder. You can twist your own knife. Get really present to what you are going to lose if you don't change. Get really present to the stakes. What's on the table if I don't change? And I think that's how we change in all kinds of areas of our life, right?
Yeah.
But time is a vector, I think, that we don't often consider. Again, it is this hidden meta resource that we are all constantly stewarding and spending, but we don't give it the merit of, this is as critical to my decision making as my finances or my estate planning or any other scarce resource that we have that we need to be very thoughtful and mindful of. Time is no different.
Yeah.
And it deserves that same level of intentionality.
I deeply love that correlation between the resource of finances and the resource of time. And it's so wild that it's so natural and ingrained in most of us to be mindful of our financial resources, but to be
Right.
spendthrifts and cavalier with the use of our time. And we don't
Right.
have an accountability. We don't have a system. And so I know I don't want you to give the house away or anything like that. But I also can we gosh, you're curious. I know, conscious investor us, and let's get into this a bit and let's talk about how do we take control of our time? What are some of the high level things? And I'm going to let you know, conscious investor, right now, two things. One, Andrew has resources that can help you as an individual. He's already built these out. So you don't have to go through this alone. Okay. So let's know that that's there. And I also know that, conscious investor, you lead a team. You are in a position of leadership. And so this is also something where you can influence and impact your entire team and the sphere and scope of where you work by bringing Andrew into this equation. Okay. And I'm not trying to sell you, but I can feel this resonating so deeply that I just want you to know that as you're listening to this, maybe just consider that as a framework of, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to maybe someone that I care about? And then, wow, what would it look like if my colleagues, if my team had these skills? So I just wanted to just kind of do a little framing here as we step into this. So let's take us down the rabbit hole, free us. Give us the red pill, Andrew.
I love it. Yeah. And like you said, Julie, all of this is available on our website, timeboss.us. If you go to the resources tab, there's a 90-minute masterclass that literally deep dives the entire model. I'm a firm believer that information is free. So please go get it if that's helpful for you. But yeah, let's definitely talk about it. So at the highest level, I mentioned the first move. I think you have to make overwhelm non-negotiable. I think that is the first thing that you have to decide.
Yeah.
And so, and like you said, it's easier said than done, right? Because we're going to continue to feel it, and it's really hard to change our feelings, and that's what's challenging in this whole process. So our feelings are downstream from our thoughts, And if you think about how that whole model works, we tend to take action based off of our feelings. So when we feel overwhelmed, we just work more. We just work late. We skip our workouts. We eat junk food because we're just looking for the dopamine hit. We're more irritable because we're frustrated or we feel challenged, right? So our feelings are um, often the source of our actions, and what it requires. There's a intentionality that comes where you have to say, okay, I am no longer going to let my feelings guide my actions. I am literally going to think past my feelings. And so what that means is, let's say you feel overwhelmed, and you it's that stress anxiety, and the thought that you have is there's not enough time. There's not enough time, or I'm always behind. And you're telling yourself something incredibly disempowering like that. Necessarily, if that is your core thought, you are going to feel stress and anxiety, and you are going to work late, and you are going to eat junk food and skip workouts and all those things. My encouragement to people is to really take ownership of their thoughts. And when you have a thought like that, say, I can plan well for my time. And so you're literally taking hold of the thought, you're shifting it differently. And when you grab a hold of a thought like that, my strong encouragement is that you jump over that feeling of overwhelm, and you take the action of just doing the work to plan your time. We're going to talk about how to plan your time, but it starts by being the boss of your thoughts, literally taking ownership of those thoughts. And here's what happens when you do that. When you think past your feelings, you are going to continue to feel overwhelmed for a while. And that's why nobody likes this, right? No, everyone wants the feelings to just go away. They want to wake up tomorrow morning and feel peace, freedom, and clarity, and it be different. That's not how life change works. What happens is you have to take hold of that thought. You have to replace it with a more empowering thought, and you have to take an action based off that thought. So my encouragement to you is to say, there is enough time if I plan well, and then you run a planning process like the one I'm going to describe. If you do that long enough, you will begin to retrain your thoughts that there is actually enough time, and you're not always behind, but you can plan well and get the life that you want. It just takes work. So that's where it starts. It starts by taking control of your thought life, by making overwhelm non-negotiable. So that's one. I can roll, Julie. If you want to stop, I can stop. You can ask questions, however you want to go.
I'm just going to insert conscious investor. You've heard me talk about the flow from the book Crucial Conversations, and here is another. It's probably something that you've read. Conscious investor. I've talked about this all the time. 4 stages, right? There's something that happens to us. We generate in a millisecond a story about that. And
Right.
then our feelings come based on that story. And then our actions come. And that's exactly
Right.
what you're talking about. This is
Right.
something I use in my coaching on a regular basis. And it's like, hey, let's just change the story. Let's change the story
Right.
so that we can influence our feelings, have different feelings so that we will do what we want to do. So I love it
So
when
powerful.
there are truths that transcend that it's just a first principle, and that's what it
Right.
is. So it's like understanding that principle is going to affect your time, it's going to affect your relationships, it's going to affect your finances, your contribution, all of it. So I wanted to double tap on that. That's like so awesome to hear that and affirming.
Yep.
So let's go in. So we have said,
Yeah.
hey, no overwhelm. We're done with you overwhelm. And we understand, just like getting fit and going back to the gym, if we've taken a break, that it's going to be uncomfortable and we might feel a
Right.
little sloppy, but we're going to work through that and it's going to be okay.
Right. It's going to take a little bit of time. If you go back to the gym and you start doing bicep curls and you go home, my wife's not going to notice the first day I come home. It's going to take some time. Any habit change takes some time. So my next strong encouragement, the next step I encourage everyone to take is to get everything out of your head and into a system. So right now, the things that you care about, the things we've lifted off, it could be your things at your main job, your side hustle, your family, your contribution you want to make. All of those things exist often in a myriad of places. Could be in your journal, could it be in a project management system, could be post-it notes around the computer, could be your reminders app on your phone. And what happens is when those things are distributed, what it prevents us from doing is understanding the trade-offs between all of those different options. Because ultimately, every single one of those little things is going to compete for your time, and you're implicitly feeling that competition. And so when you start working on one, you implicitly feel the myriad of other tasks that you're saying no to, and they are clawing at your attention. And that's what creates that sense of overwhelm. It's even though I'm working on this thing right now, I still feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm never going to get to that entire list. The average person has 121 items on their to-do list because we were all told we need to have a to-do list, right? And so
Oh
the
gosh.
the tools we've been told are the things that are overwhelming us. 3 out of 5 people, based off statistics, are overwhelmed by their to-do list. So the thing that they told us to use to solve our overwhelm is actually the thing that's only increasing our overwhelm. And so the tools aren't enough. But the big idea is this. We need to be in a position to do one thing at a time and be fully present to it. We will bring our
Yes.
best work to anything if we can set everything else aside and be fully present to it. Right now, like for you and I, Julie, our whole job in the world is to have a great conversation and for the conscious investor listening to participate with us, right? If I was the more that all the other things in my world were clawing at my head, were pulling me out of this moment, the worse our conversation would be. I'd be less present. I'd be less creative. I'd be less open to your questions. And so by getting everything out of my head and into a system that I trust and I know is going to hold those things for me, it allows me to be fully present in this right here with what we're doing right now, regardless of what it is that you're working on. That could be a date with your wife. That could be sitting on the floor playing with your kids. Whatever it is, you need a system that's going to give you freedom in this present moment to really do your best work or be fully present to whatever it is that you want to do. Once that's out of your head and into a system, now the question is, what is the priority of those items? And so the reality is, if you think about it, right now, our highest priority that you and I have identified is to be on this call together and have this conversation, right? It ranked up based off a due date, based off your desire to share this with the conscious investor community, based off my desire to help people, whatever it is, it ranked up to the top of the list, and I scheduled it in this time. So everything in your list competes. And so my encouragement to people is to have a regular rhythm where whatever time's going to compete. So if you decide to do this for work, for example, your 8 to 10 hours of work, or however long you choose to work, then have a list for just those things and work to figure out the actual priority of those things. It can be as simple as just stack ranking 1, 2, 3. But the reality is, at 8 a.m. on Monday, when you show up to work, you're going to do something. And so my encouragement is that you have this weekly planning process where you're deciding what are those actual priorities. We often stress ourselves out by constantly going back to the list and trying to evaluate the trade-offs and trying to evaluate the priority. And it creates all kinds of real-time stress because every time we look at the list, it's not as easy as just saying yes to whatever's on top. We feel the weight of saying no to all those other things or reevaluating. Is that the priority now? Is that not the priority now? So again, taking that weekly planning process to figure out the priority. That's the key next step. Because the reality is they have a priority. Push comes to shove, you're going to do something. So I'm just encouraging people to do the work, to feel all the feels and get those things in priority order.
That's okay. That's so interesting what you were saying, Andrew, about saying no. And it's, we are conditioned to have negative feelings. There is an association
Correct.
that most of us have when we say no. Our whole demeanor, our attunement just lowers down oftentimes when we say no. We love saying yes, and that's why there are movies about it, Yes Day
Right.
and such. But we don't like saying no. So it's really interesting psychologically. I've never considered the psychological impact of having to constantly filter through and prioritize the tasks, but more importantly, that I'm saying no to these other things. Whew.
Correct. I joke that they're the children that we're not feeding. Because if you look at anything on your list, Julie, I guarantee you it's connected back to a relationship. Every single thing on your list is connected back to a relationship. And it might even be with you, right? Your desire to care for yourself. But for certain, it's family or a boss or a client or an investor or a partner. And so no means we feel like we are hurting someone, that someone is losing.
Right.
It's a zero-sum game and someone else is getting and someone else is losing. And that's really painful for us. Now,
So
again,
good.
this is where I think having ownership of our thoughts is critical because that's not actually true, right? We are finite beings, just like any resource we have. And because we are finite, necessarily our time is so valuable. It is so critical. And so we become a fund manager or a steward of that time to literally to think about it like we're deploying capital. How do we deploy time to the life that we want? And in order to get that, again, we just have to do the work to prioritize. And again, my strong encouragement is that happens within a weekly process, maybe a Friday afternoon, a quiet moment for yourself where you're gonna feel it, right? You're gonna feel some feels. As you're prioritizing, you're gonna see things start working that way down the list, and it's gonna hurt. But
Mhm.
you're localizing that to just that weekly planning process. You're not feeling that all week long. As you'll see in a second, we're going to work to get these priorities to your calendar. So you're not going to feel that every time you go back to your to-do list. What we're trying to do is create some emotional margin over the next 7 days for you just to make the life happen that you want to have happen, knowing you're going to come back next week and you'll do it all over again.
Mm.
But let's just get these next 7 days lined up for you in a way that you can really be fully present to what matters to you.
I think that conscious investor, you and I just felt a flood of oxygen in the room. And you can just say a little amen in your head if you want. You're on the treadmill, what have you, But yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, and so let's continue.
Yeah.
We're saying no to overwhelm. We're creating a system, and just on that, I was thinking about how often I have a friend who's a financial organizer, and most people have their finances like I have to log in here and here and here and here, and it's a similar concept of like, no, let's
Yep.
centralize things so that we are not spending our energy going everywhere. We're like spending our energy in a very focused, intentional way, and now we're prioritizing. This is feeling good. This is feeling good. Let's see some light now.
Yeah, we'll get there. So once you do that, the next step, the big idea here on this next step, Julie, is that everything we do in life is a discrete task. So if you think about this last week of your life, you could describe it in arrears in hourly blocks. I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and I did this, and then you got whatever outcomes you got from that time. And so my strongly held belief is if we can look back and describe our life that way, then with intention, we can look forward and start to map out our life that way. And so anything we want, a stronger relationship with your kids, a deeper relationship with your spouse, your investment portfolio to grow, anything that we want in life is a series of discrete steps. There is no magic wand where we just get the thing. If I want a stronger relationship with my wife, I need to prioritize time every day to connect with her. I need to prioritize a date night where we're connected. I need to prioritize a weekend away once a quarter where there's no kids and it's just our chance to be together. All of those things cost time. I literally just described activities that cost time. And so when we go through our priorities and we get those things in the system in that list and we've got those things prioritized, if we take that very first item, now we're just doing a simple little breakdown. Let's say the top item on your list is we'll just go with strengthening your relationship with your spouse. If that's truly the number one thing for you right now, then you might do a breakdown. You just said, okay, I'm going to do 30 minutes every night. We're going to connect on the couch and have a good conversation. And I'm going to schedule a date night for next week, and that's going to take 3 hours. What you're doing is you're breaking down those priorities into actionable 1 to 4 hour tasks. And that's really critical, 1 to 4 hours, because we can work with 1 to 4 hours. We can wrap our head around a 1 to 4 hour item. Any bigger than that, it's much harder for us to estimate. It's just harder for us to even figure out when we would fit that in our world.
Yes.
So the work to be done here is to really take those priorities and break them down into actionable tasks that you can take. You think of it like you're almost like a project manager for your future self. That's the whole day. We haven't even mentioned this yet,
Yeah.
Julie, but the whole idea of Time Boss is you are setting up your future self to be successful. You're truly the boss of your future self. Your future self has no agency over your planning process, right? They are going to be subject to whatever you give them. So if you make no plan and 8 a.m. on Monday, you show up and you're just making it up as you go along, you know what? We've just punted to our future self and we tell them to hope for the best. But what we do in this Time Boss process is we're literally setting aside time to literally think of our future self almost like an employee that we care about, who we want to have a great experience of life, who we want to get the results that they want. And we're doing work to set them up to be successful. And so in this process, in this breakdown process, this 1 to 4 hours, we're literally just breaking down these priorities into actionable tasks that our brain understands. Think of these like mile markers on a marathon, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just saying your top priority is to run a marathon, you're literally breaking it down where your brain understands you're making progress and you're headed in the right direction and you have a plan that you can actually operate. And so our work to be done here is really just breaking those things down. You don't have to do it with all the items in your list. Really, if you think about it, you only have so many hours next week. You only have to break down I often recommend the top 20 items in your list. You're likely going to fill up your week just with those top 20 items. Um, so once you have that breakdown, now you have an actionable plan, right? You are looking at whatever your priorities are, and you've given yourself the stepping stones in the river to actually make that thing happen. With Kelly's my wife. If I'm going to spend 30 minutes with her every night on the couch, and we're going to have a date night next Thursday night, and I'm about to get those to my calendar where I'm committing to them that are going to happen, in 7 days, I am going to have a stronger relationship with my spouse. I'm going to be getting the life that I want simply by being the boss of my future self, saying, hey, buddy, you don't even have to think about it. I'm going to get these on the calendars for you. So when you show up on Monday night at 7:30, it's couch time. We don't have to go back and look at our to-do list and reevaluate, should I spend time with Kelly or should I work on all these other things? No. We've made the decision for our future self, and it's just couch time. And this is how we get the life that we want.
I will insert that oftentimes highly motivated individuals struggle to have that rest and relaxation. I was listening to Michael Gervais recently, and he was talking about, hey, if you're going to be operating at maximum intensity, then you also have to have that type of rest that is going to be like,
Correct.
Balance that out. And what I love about this is, for those that are learning how to incorporate rest in their life and fun and activities and things like that without feeling guilt, which is just, there's a lot more behind that. So, but we're not touching that right now. But this really provides that vehicle to say, like, no, it's on my calendar. I am following the direct order that I was given. I need to be a couch potato right now, and I don't need to feel guilty while I'm doing that.
Yeah, you're taking in that weekly planning process, you're creating a sober moment where you're deciding on behalf of your future self, how do we structure this for them to win? It'd be like if you were a personal trainer for yourself. You wouldn't say, hey, you know what, we're just going to work out 12 hours a day, every single day. I think we all know intuitively we would break down. It would be counterintuitive. We wouldn't even be successful towards our fitness goals.
Right.
Either something would break or tear, or our muscles wouldn't even develop at the rate that we want them to develop because they're so overstrained. Mm-hmm. And we just don't think that way about our mental capacities, but it's true. In this modern world, we're all knowledge workers. Our value is the choices and decisions we make between our ears, right? There's not typically a widget that we're stamping out. And there's not a factory floor that we leave at 5 p.m. and go home and we couldn't do work if we want to. We can do work all the time, nonstop. We are forever connected with the device in our pocket. And so we have to make decisions in sober moments about how much of our life are we willing to give to any area that we're focused on. That includes our work. That includes our side hustle. That includes our family. And that's it's a perfect segue. That's really the next step, Julie. So now if you think about where we are, we've made Overwhelm non-negotiable. We've got everything out of our head into a system. We've prioritized that work. We've broken those down to 1 to 4 hour tasks. So we have a real action plan of how we're going to move those priorities forward. Now it's time to move it to our calendar. And really the big idea here is your calendar is your to-do list. We are no longer keeping calendar and to-do list separate. To-do lists by their nature are going to require time. Our calendar is the place that represents the time that we have. It only makes sense that we combine the two together. It's silly that we ever separated them.
Yes.
We've been living a lie. So if you've never time blocked before, what we're moving towards is time blocking. And in this step, my encouragement to you conscious investors is one thing you start with is just to budget out your life like a pie. So how much of your week are you going to give to work? How much of your week are you going to give to your side hustle? How much of your week are you going to give to your family? You decide the areas of your life. How many hours of a week are you going to give to fitness, to rest and recovery? And I actually want you to go and represent that on your calendar. Literally create events that show when you're going to focus on those areas of life on your calendar. You don't have to leave those on there, but what this activity is going to show you is that you are a finite human being. You only have so much time. And in a sober moment, you are deciding how the pie slices up. There's not more pie. You can't create more pie. We all only have 168 hours, and that includes that you need to sleep. But you're just simply making a decision of how is this going to slice up and how much of my life am I going to give to each of these areas? And if you go to that, my guess is that's going to make you feel uncomfortable, especially if you want to get family in there and you want to get fitness in there and you want to get play or rest in there. You probably are not going to be comfortable with the amount of time left over for your side hustle or for your full-time work. But this is real. And this is where we have to come to terms with reality. A massive saying, or a really important saying that we have in the time boss world, is reality is my friend. I just have to come to terms that there is only so much time. And I need to come to terms with that in a sober moment. Where we typically experience that is real time at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it stresses us out and we feel overwhelmed and we stay late at work and we open our laptop after our kids go to bed and we keep working and we just feed the overwhelm. What I'm encouraging you to do is, in a sober moment in this weekly planning process, is decide ahead for your future self how it's going to go. And it's really critical that you do that.
This is so powerful. Maybe 3-4 years ago, when I started planning my time, I realized when you start doing this, if you know these are the tasks that I need to accomplish this week, and these are meetings that I have, and these are things that I um, for me, and I have not implemented fully, like time boss technique, right? But I remember just initially going through this process of, okay, well, I have maybe a team meeting on this day. I can't change that, the whole team's meeting.
Right.
And then, like building out all of the elements that you're talking about. It was amazing.
Right.
I'm like, how do I have time to do anything? And all of a
Right.
sudden, the priorities became even clearer of, actually, I need to hire that out, or I need to not
Yeah.
do that. That's actually not really in the lane,
Yes.
and that's
Yes.
superfluous. Like, why did I even think that I needed to do that? So,
Well, and you probably felt functionally infinite, right, Julie? Because you hadn't come the cost, right? It's just like
mhm,
swiping a credit card. Like, I don't know. I
yeah,
mean, it just keeps working. Every time I swipe it, the transaction keeps running,
yeah,
but eventually that's going to come back to haunt you. And I think it's
definitely.
almost like paying cash with our time. There's only so much cash. Once
Yes.
the cash is gone, I can't give any else out.
Such a good
So
analogy.
your intuition, I think, is right on, Julie, and that's really the next step. So once you've identified, let's focus in on one area of life. Let's focus in on your 8 hours of work or your 10 hours of work, whatever it is, whatever you designate on your calendar for whatever your most significant income generating activity. Maybe that's a 40 to 60 hour work that you're doing. So what you're going to do then is you're simply going to take the priorities that match that piece of the pie, starting at the top of the list, and you're going to map in those tasks that you have. And so,
Mhm.
8 a.m. on Monday, whatever is your number one task at the top of your priority list, that's going to happen at 8 a.m. on Monday. And then you work your way down your calendar. Now, as you mentioned, before you do that, you have to make sure you put in any recurring commitment you already have. If that's team meetings, one-on-ones, whatever you've got. You need to add in any personal appointments you have, doctor's appointment, those types of things, because all those things take up time. And so again, we're coming to terms with reality that every single thing we do costs us this precious time that we have. The one key thing, just to back up a step, that I do recommend, and this often takes a significant chunk out of overwhelm, is adding a thing I call whirlwind or buffer time to your calendar. So whatever area of life you're focused on, my recommendation is you have 20 to 40% of that time non-scheduled, but it's on your calendar where you're representing nothing can go in this bucket. And here's what goes in that time: phone calls, emails, last second requests, kid hugs, water heater goes out, all the chaos of life that we cannot, there's nothing we can do to keep it from coming. We can't predict it on the front end. It would be illogical for us to even try to time block for those things. So we're simply representing on our calendar that we know these things are going to happen. We're not going to overschedule our calendar to make sure we make room for those things. This alone
Yeah.
is often the number one thing coming reported out of the Time Boss framework where people feel the most freedom because they've been overpacking their calendar. Those things continue to happen. The client calls and you're like, I know I need to do this, but I know I already have a full schedule. So instantly I feel overwhelmed. There's more things to do than I have time to do it. What Whirlwind does is it creates some buffer for us to deal with those things that are coming. And here's the magic of it, Julie, and this is what people love. If you block time for Whirlwind in your calendar and you don't need it, we're all type A people, right? Like we care about our contribution. We will fill that time. We'll go back to our system. We'll grab the next priority item. We'll work on it. And a magical thing happens when we do that, Julie. We start feeling like we're playing from ahead. We're no longer feeling behind. We're like, holy smokes, I just grabbed something from tomorrow and I'm working on it today. You feel like a superhero when you feel ahead of schedule. And so you'll notice what we're very intentionally doing is we are influencing not only um, aligning your life to your priorities to make sure the most critical things happen. We're literally changing the story that you tell yourself about work. We're helping you show up and feel like a superhero, an empowered superhero that's making great work happen, not someone that's just clawing to get to the end of their day, crashing into bed and falling asleep and doing it again the next day. That's not sustainable. There's no way you'll do that long term. So you've got Whirlwind, you've got items in your calendar. Um, Guaranteed, you are going to run out of time. You're going to fill up your calendar, these time slots that you've created, and you're not going to. There's going to be things left in your list that you're not going to get to your calendar. And this again is a sober moment that's really important. There is no more time. This is the moment for you to deal with those items that don't fit. You said it earlier, Julie, perfectly. I need to delegate them, or I need to just get rid of them. Why am I even doing this? This is the wrong thing for me to be doing with my time. Or, and
Yes.
this is the magic of having a weekly planning process, just leave them into your system till next week. Just defer them till next week. Next week, you're going to come back again and you're going to map items into your calendar. If it doesn't have to happen in the next 7 days, just let it sit in the system, knowing that your system's going to hold it safely. You don't have to worry about it. It will be there when you come back next week. But no matter what, you have to deal with the items that don't fit. If you don't deal with the items that don't fit, they will be emotional anchors all week long. They are going to be the children that you're not feeding. They're screaming for your attention. And so this is the time to do the work and set them aside. And that's not hard. That's not easy. That's probably the hardest part of this process, because the reason we feel overwhelmed is because we're allowing those things to take up mental space, even though we're never going to get to them anyways, right? We start our day with 20 items on our to-do list and we only get 3 done. But it felt good to start the day with 20 items on the list. Hope was our strategy. We're going to make it happen. But at the end of the day, we feel overwhelmed because we didn't get those items done. We are trying to set that whole system aside and create a realistic plan that is aligned to your priorities that you can make happen week over week over week over week, where overwhelm is not a part of the process. If you do that, you will find your highest sustainable pace and you will make the biggest impact over the long haul. But it requires that weekly discipline of showing up, being your own time boss, mapping it to your calendar, and then rinsing and repeat week over week over week.
Gosh, so good. Andrew, it's so good. And you have such a fantastic way of just, transferring this concept and this knowledge, right? And that's because it's lived. It's well worn. It's well tested.
Yes.
And that's something where when we can look back and say, well, this is great. Someone just came up with a system and, yay, it worked for them. No, this is something that's been vetted and endured.
Right.
And I feel like it's a well-worn pair of jeans that it's like, no, just keep wearing those jeans because like they were the softness and all the tears, they were well earned, this is a system that works. And I just love the freedom. And I love how you are incorporating the emotional element into it.
Right.
That's how we live life. We live life,
Right.
conscious investor, from the inside out. And if we can understand that and we can create an operating system that allows us to generate the feelings that we are after, wow, life becomes technicolor.
Absolutely. Yeah. I often say that people don't realize how bad it is until they change. And then they look back and think, oh my gosh, like it was like I had a leg in a bear trap. Like they just don't understand what's possible when your relationship with time is right, where you're operating in this pocket of peace, freedom, and clarity under the items that matter most. You're not doing less. Like you'll notice very functionally, like I'm not changing the amount of things you're doing. I'm just changing the way that you approach that work where it's fully aligned to the life that you want and giving yourself permission to set things aside so they don't continue to overwhelm you. So yes, I ran a weekly planning meeting on Monday morning. I eat this dog food every single week. It is the second I feel overwhelmed, it's what I turn to get back aligned and fully present to what's in front of me. So what I just described was a very quick flyover. There's a 90-minute masterclass that walks you through, literally handholds you through step by step of how to do that. And so I would encourage anyone to check out that masterclass if they're curious about this. And then obviously when it comes to implementation, helping you do that personally or helping your company do that, we can definitely chat about the additional support Time Boss can provide.
I just love this, Andrew, so much so. I'm so grateful for, just having the introduction of you in my life. It's just like such a gift. And then conscious investor, don't take this for granted. I mean, wow, there's a resource out there that can support you. Here's my encouragement to you, conscious investor. I want to encourage you, and we'll put a link in the show notes. I want to encourage you, go watch the training. Okay. Implement this into your life. And I'm going to encourage you, if you're married, watch it together so that you guys can be on the same
Yes.
page, speaking the same language. Test it out yourself. Start implementing this in your life. And then I want you to encourage you to level up the people around you, because nothing should just stay put with us. And that's a beautiful thing, Andrew, is that this isn't something that just has stayed for you. And you're like, cool, I cracked the code and I'm living my best life. Like, peace out, y'all. Like, you're being a go-giver and you're helping others. And so, conscious investor, again, my encouragement to you is sit down, watch this with your spouse, and then take this and be an ambassador in your workplace, in your communities. There isn't a place or people in Western United States and just Western culture in general, is like everyone will benefit from this. And so be that ambassador at leveling everyone around you up. But change starts with you, just like it started with Andrew. He did 1-to-1, which was one to himself, and then it went out from there. 1-to-1, one to few. Okay, so maybe you're helping your buddies, and then one to many. Take it to your boss. And for those of you who are in management positions, implement what you see practical. Like, if this works for you, it's going to work for everybody. Okay. So good, Andrew. I know we are being conscientious of time, and I know we have a hard stop. So I just want to thank you again for coming on the show and pouring into the conscious investor. And conscious investor, please take a moment. If this served and supported you, please take a moment, share this with one person. And if everyone listening does that right now, we double the footprint of the show. And remember, this is organic. This isn't about, oh, we're doing this. We're doing this because we get amazing experts like Andrew to come onto the show that support you. And so when we grow the show, we're saying, wow, we can attract amazing experts like Andrew to come in and pour into you. It's free to you. So this is just your way of saying, like, I value this. I appreciate this. So just take that moment to share, and don't hesitate to schedule a time for us to chat down in the show notes. Until next time, cheers to your health, your mindset, and your wealth.